Welcome. This week we're getting ready to go over lessons 85 to 88. So last week I shared with you the first of 3 phrases from an article by Rachel Furman, who is a math educator, on phrases that can demotivate students in math class. The phrase we talked about last week is avoid saying, "This is so easy." Well, this week, the phrase you need to avoid is, "You're so smart." I know. Why wouldn't you want to tell your child he's smart? Anyway, like I said, she's talking about and being in a classroom. A lot of you are not in a classroom, right? But you do have other children around. Depending on each child and where they're at and what their ability is, and if they hear you telling one of their brothers or sisters, "Oh, you're so smart," and this is an area that they're struggling in. Well, here, let me read it. When a student who feels like they aren't a math person hears another student being praised for being so smart, it only reinforces the negative attitude that they have toward math and themselves. And this is kind of key here. It reinforces a student's belief that some kids are just smarter than others when it comes to math. Rather than praising your child for their intelligence, praise them for their hard work, their determination, their attention to detail, their communication skills, and their ability to work with others. Even praise them for taking risks academically. When considering how to offer praise, make sure that whatever you are praising is something that any other child within hearing feels capable of replicating. And like I said, her focus is the classroom. You're a little different. You're at home, but you also have other children around. And something more I want to add on the phrase, "You're so smart." Like I said, I have 6 children. My oldest son really struggled with math, like seriously struggled with math. And I would tell him, "You're so smart." And then he'd be like, "Well, if I'm so smart, how come I'm not understanding this math?" He has an above average intelligence, but he has a learning disability when it comes to math. So even in that area, I had to be really careful using that term, "You're so smart," because he applied it to nothing other than what he couldn't do. He still even struggles to this day feeling confident in his ability to do math. Now, we didn't use Right Start. I didn't find Right Start till he was much older. His younger brothers got to use it though. But all that to say, that term, "You're so smart," be careful and be selective on how you use it. All right, so enough about that. Let's see what materials will be needed for this week. You're going to need the child's workbook, the abacus, the math card game book, along with the basic number card deck, the child's journal, which happens to be in their workbook, the part hole circle set, a dry erase board, and the corner cards. Lesson 85, 10 minus a number. So last week, the last lesson, we just started to dabble into subtraction. They had been really focusing on time. And remember, we're going to bring that back into the review starting in lesson 89. So you're going to your child is going to have more time to work on their reading a clock. So you could wait till then if you want. You could always throw it in now too if you want, but just to let you know that it is coming. Remember, the sums practice is found in the back of the math journal. Your child has 2 sums to do. I'm going to say this one more time. I won't say it every single time we get to a lesson, but remember that sums practice, that could be something done earlier. It can be done later in the day. It does not have to be done during your math time. You're going to start off the activities today with a game called 10 minus game. It's found in S1 in the math card game book. Remember, S stands for subtraction. So you're going to go to the chapter of subtraction. It's the very first game, and it's based on the go to the dump game. However, don't mention go to the dump game to them as you're playing it. That's something hopefully they're going to recognize it because that's a question you're going to ask them at the end. The whole objective of this game is for a child to see the relationship between addition and subtraction for the facts of 10. So you're going to lay out your basic number cards 1 through 9. You'll start with 10. You're going to pick a card. Say it's the 3. That's the example in the game book. You're going to move 3 away from 10. What is left? It's 7. And of course, by now, your children should be really good with 7 and 3 is 10. They may not even need to use the abacus. And if they don't, that's all right. Don't force it. You could use it for the first time and show it. It's a tool, right? It's a tool if they need it. And then when they know that the answer is 7, they look for 7, so they could put 7 and 3. So 10 minus 3 is 7, as well as 7 plus 3 is 10. You will also be using the part whole circle set. So you could use the one you have in a page protector. You could draw it on the drawing board. But this is, I can't tell you how much I love this, the part whole circle set. I may have mentioned this before. I can't remember. So I just have to say it again. I love it because they're familiar with the part whole circle set. They've been doing this. They didn't even realize when they were doing addition that they were also doing subtraction, or maybe they did, but it's subtle. It's one of those subtle things. So now you're going to use it for subtraction, but it's very familiar with your children because they've been using it for addition. And I like that it's a gentle approach. It kind of is gently bringing them into subtraction. My granddaughter, who I'm working with right now, is a little bit freaking out that we're going to be starting some subtraction stuff. I'm not sure what her experience was in school, but when I mentioned we'll be starting on subtraction, she gets a little bit anxious. And so I'm taking it slow with her. But she's familiar with this kind of stuff, the part whole circle set. So I'm looking forward to see how she responds with the way Right Start teaches. You're going to end this lesson with a game called 10 as the minuend. And again, minuend, one of those words, kind of like subitizing. Like, what in the world does it mean? It tells you. It says the minuend is a starting number from which another number is subtracted. So 10 as the minuend means you're subtracting a number from 10. And in both games, you only need 6 of the cards, 6 of each of the basic number cards, 0 through 10. In the 10 as a minuend game, notice though, you need to take out a lot more zeros. You won't need as many zeros for this game. And you're going to be using 10, the card, the basic number card, as the minuend. And you can see in the game book. So you're going to lay out 5 10s. You're going to lay out some random numbers underneath. And then that's what they're going to practice subtracting and having to find the card to lay down to match. For example, the first is the 10 with the 3. Well, if we have 10 and we subtract 3, what's our answer? It's 7. So if you have a 7 in your hand of cards, you get to lay the 7 down and you get those cards. Lesson 86, subtraction as the missing add-in. This is probably one of my most favorite ways to subtract. And basically it's just adding up. And that's what the child's going to be learning. Notice at the bottom of this first page, it shows 6 plus, and then it has a box. Those boxes are there just to get your children familiar, because sometimes when they have to take a test, if you have to take a standardized test or, depending on where you live, sometimes they have to take tests. This way they'll be familiar when they see it on a test. That also kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to be doing. 6 plus what equals 9? Well, 6 and 3 make 9. Well, 9 minus 6 is what? It's 3. So when you see this 9 minus 6, you could look at the 6 and say, oh, I need 3 more to make 9. Oh, my answer is 3. So that's what it means by subtraction as the missing add-in. And again, they're using the part whole circle set. So they're going to see it as an addition. Then they're going to see it as the subtraction. They'll be using their abacus also if needed. The worksheet's going to reinforce. It's going to start off with addition problems, and it says to find the missing add-in by adding on in your head. And then it goes on into subtraction, and it says subtract by adding on in your head. Now again, if your child needs the abacus, let them use the abacus for this. But encourage them to try it each time without needing the abacus, because eventually they'll get to a place where they're not going to need the abacus. Lesson 87, subtraction by going back. There is an activity in the warm-up. It is the, let's see, first, second, third, fourth, like the fifth paragraph where it starts with, ask the child to count by tens to 215. We don't have an abacus tile in the materials, but you probably want to have one available. They're counting by tens to 215, but they're starting with 25. So it's going to be like 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, and then you're going to get to 105. This is where I would have that abacus tile if needed. Your child may not need this to remember. Lay to the side to represent the 100, and then they have their 5, and then they'll go 115, 125, 135. You're doing it by 5, so they're going to add the 2 5s and see as a 10. Subtraction by going back. This is pretty basic. I think just looking at the abacus, you could see how it works. Here we have 13 minus 1. Your child's going to enter 13 on the abacus. They're going to subtract 1. They're going to see what their answer is. And then it works with some real basic numbers. You're just subtracting 1, you'll be subtracting 2, and then notice you'll get into subtracting 5 and 10. Then it's going to have you subtract 15, but look and see how you're supposed to do that. You start with 10 and then the 5. So example, 60 minus 15. Well, if we do that with a 10 first, 60 minus 10 is 50. Then we subtract the 5, it's going to be 45. If needed, if your child cannot do this mentally, put that first number on the abacus and then see if they could figure it out without subtracting anything on the abacus. Sometimes they just need to see it to get that visual in their mind. This lesson ends with a game called Zero Corners. It's S9 in the math card game book. We also have a blog about it, which gives a little bit more information and hopefully can help you understand how to play it better. I'm going to take you there really quick because it's been a while since we've done this. So here we are at our website, rightstartmath.com. I'm going to go up here to the search. I'm going to put in 0 and then corners. And it pulls up. This was a blog that we wrote back in 2017. And so you just click read more. And it goes in and explains a little bit better on how to play the game. Last lesson for the week, lesson 88. Subtracting consecutive numbers. So the materials does not list, or at least in my book, it doesn't list a part whole circle set or the drawing board. So you're going to need one or the other because you will be using the part whole circle set in this lesson. They're going to learn 2 terms. They'll learn the term difference, which is the amount between what you have and what you're subtracting. And then they're going to learn the term consecutive, which just means one right after the other. And that's what they're going to be subtracting is consecutive numbers. Look on the second page at that second set of figures that's kind of in the upper middle. It has the 18 in the whole and then the 16 and the 2. That figure is representing consecutive even numbers. The figure next to it goes with the paragraph, couple paragraphs below, that has to do with subtracting consecutive odd numbers. And of course, your child can subtract it the way that's comfortable with them. This is one of those things to me where you're adding up just comes in great. You know, what is 17 15 from 17. Well, 15 to 17 is 2. It's easier for me to think of it in addition, as addition, versus the subtracting. So just throwing that out there because that might be your child. That might be you too. But then you may have a child who has no problem with the whole subtracting the 2 from 17. They can see it immediately. For some of us, we have to do it the other way. All right, we have finished this week and we are just getting into subtraction. We're going to be on that focus not only this week, but we're going to be on it next week also. Remember, you have that 5th day. If your child is taking a little bit longer to adjust to the subtraction, slow it down if you need to. Play the games on that 5th day, but also know that we're going to continue working on subtraction. It's kind of like an appetizer on subtraction because level C is going to really hit subtraction strong. So even if your child is struggling a little bit, know that they're going to get more of it when we get to level C. This is just kind of like a little taste of it. So join me next week as we go over lessons 89 to 92. Until then.